some noise expected. The university is St. Cloud State. That's where we are today. The majority of these little films that I've created for your section of Comp 1 to try to make this course more human have been shot at my home. Some of them in my kitchen, the two places where I work out there, a lot of them out in the yard on my 20 acres near my little house in the peat bog. But I'm in St. Cloud this morning with my older son, our cameraman. My younger son, William, has landed a role in Winnie the Pooh. He wanted to be Christopher Robin, but he ended up instead in the chorus. He's a squirrel. And he's over at the Paramount practicing. And we thought we would spend this Saturday getting up just some final remarks to close this class down. And wish you goodbye, except for the couple of you that are going to come back and keep working with me. St. Cloud State is a completely appropriate place to shoot a Comp 1 video. As you all know, St. Cloud State is one of the 32 MnSCU schools, and I have a number of students in my Comp 1s right now and in my Films Appreciation class that are going to transfer down here next year. And maybe that'll be you. Maybe you're going to transfer to St. Cloud State. Maybe you'll transfer to other four-year schools in the MnSCU system, fine schools like Winona State and Bemidji State, UMD, etc. And I've got some connections here because I went to graduate school here, and this is where my MA is from. And like I've joked before, I'm so dumb I had to go to graduate school twice. I came back here a couple of years ago to get my unclaimed MA in English from the 80s. Excuse me, a little croaky here. We are in one of the most beautiful academic libraries you're ever going to see. And if you consider going to St. Cloud State, you be sure to stop in here at the Miller Center. This is a multi-million-dollar facility. It's a fantastic library, and I find it very modern, but also very beautiful. So what I want to talk to you about today is just a kind of a review of some of the bigger ideas from the course. This course has had a theme, the rhetoric of writing, and that's pretty much been the subject of the bulk of these little vids that I've been making for you. The thing I want to stress is that I hope you continue to wonder about rhetoric beyond this class. I think it is a way of living in the world. It is a way, a kind of stance towards living through this human reality that I've talked plenty about. You probably don't need much review there. This little video isn't just so you can negotiate our last little online quiz. This is hopefully going to be a couple of videos where I bring to light some of the things that strike me as important, as ongoing in importance. Now, I'll be repeating some things that I mentioned in my face-to-face class this week when we did a little bit of review just 2 days ago. The first of these is that this rhetorical triangle that I've been talking about is really present anytime there's any kind of communication occurring. I know we talk to ourselves. There is something called intrapersonal communication. That's that inner chatter, us always talking to ourselves, that inner voice, self-addressing self. And it's kind of like Harold Bloom says, Shakespeare's characters are the first in the world's literary stage, in which characters talk to themselves and overhear themselves. And in overhearing themselves, they're transformed. That's true of us too. But generally, when we're in the public realm, we are in the presence of communication, which involves a voice communicating something to an audience about a given subject. Anytime there's an element of that, any of those constituent parts are missing, you really don't have communication going on. The playful example I brought up at CLC the other day, an hour north of here, is that, if you go into a men's room particularly, you're going to see the discourse of graffiti, but it's never signed, is it? I don't see any graffiti on the bathroom walls at Central Lakes College, almost none. But down here at St. Cloud State, where I was teaching a year ago, I studied it all the time, just kind of absent-mindedly. Anything written on a wall, I'm going to try to read it. Young people down here in the men's room don't write nice graffiti on the bathroom walls, and they don't write it on the walls per se, because it's going to get wiped off if they put it on the tiles of the steel. What I observed a year ago was young men writing clever and satirical and somewhat naughty things on the grout, right, between the tiles. It's never signed, though, is it? It's anonymous. Makes me think of the internet. One of my anxieties about it is there are so many people writing things anonymously, not standing up with what they write. That's not rhetoric. It also evokes the crank phone calls we used to make back in the 60s and early 70s, long before caller ID. You'd pick up a phone and you'd call some random number and say, "Hey, your refrigerator's running," and you'd hang up. That's not rhetoric. The beginning of all this is the idea of a voice. You'll remember that the voice has an appeal that centers on the ethos of the speaker. Anyone who seeks to be a speaker in public or a writer in public assembles an ethos, and I hope you remember the three things that comprise it. That's knowledge of the subject matter. You've got to know what you're talking about. The ancients anyway, I don't know if you believe in it, the ancients believed that a rhetor should be also a good person. That means ethically good, that means morally good. And the ancients also believed that the third aspect of the ethos had to do with goodwill. To ingratiate yourself to an audience, you've got to show them goodwill and respect. Now, I don't know if you felt it on these online videos, but for those of you that are going to come and join me in my Comp 2s in the second semester, I won't say your names and violate data privacy. I hope you feel from minute one when you walk into one of my Comp 2 classes starting on January 9th, that I'm offering nothing but goodwill and respect and curiosity towards any student that comes in there. I don't want to fake that, that's important. I believe in these three things. We've also talked too about the idea that there is an appeal that centers on an audience, that the ancients, that Aristotle names as pathos. That's an emotion-centered appeal. We don't need a lot of training in that. I haven't given you much training on how to make someone feel angry or indignant or jealous or happy or outraged. I mean, we've got a limited number of emotions, and when you as a speaker or a writer push those buttons, you're making an emotional or a pathos-centered appeal. Way back in the middle of this course, I think it was around October, there was this long story that I told you that was not watched as much as the little plastic man getting eaten up by the dinosaur video, which was part one, of students that I led up a Royal Road once upon a time and let them write a whole bunch of Fortune 500 companies in which they lied about products that they had never purchased and extorted all kinds of cash, coupons, and merchandise from those companies. The main pathos-centered appeal that they made in that 1990 bad idea of mine was guilt. You sold me this crappy product. Now what are you going to do to compensate me? You don't need much training in that. There is also a subject-centered appeal, and that is famously logic. I'm no logician. I dropped the only logic course I ever signed up for. It's just a little too mathematical for me. But we did earlier talk about the idea of syllogisms and enthymemes. I remember that video lesson. You've got to be able to argue from cause and effects. If not, you're just ranting. Now in the second semester, if you come back to me and if you take other courses, other sections of Comp 2, a number of you are going to be have put before you more ideas about reasoning logically, because Comp 2's territory is a research paper. You're going to write from the rhetoric of fact. And my students are going to get a little blast of Toulmin-style reasoning, which is will be an effort of me to be just a little bit more attentive to issues of logic and issues of reasoning from causes. So those are the big three, right? Everything starts with a voice, addressing some kinds of subject about some kind of audience, and those appeals that sort of constituently swirl around those are ethos, pathos, and logos. I've been talking about this for 25 years, and I've only begun to talk about it. I feel like I'm running through a laundry list of items here, but I guess that's what review is all about, huh? I want to remind you, too, that rhetoric anciently was conceived as something that had what I was trained to think of on this campus back in the 80s as houses of rhetoric. And I'll even name the teacher that helped me think that way. Our teacher is David Severson, who has jumped ship here. He's no longer with the English department 30 years in the future. He's in the art department. He taught me to imagine a building of rhetoric, so to speak, and to be successful in it, you had to move through its houses. Everything in rhetoric begins, as he taught me so many years ago when I was on this campus, with invention. Invention, you'll recall, is the process through which we achieve and imagine our topics for writing and speaking. It's dead simple, and it's where everything begins. Everything everything that you write or talk about begins with your imagination coming up with a topic. You'll remember that the Greeks imagined that it was impossible to speak or write about something that had never been spoken or written about before. So they created this magic storehouse sort of in their imaginations. They believed that any school that you were at, from here to the schools of rhetoric in Athens, 5 centuries before Christ, your soul would leave your body, fly to the storehouse with a topic, bring it back to earth. You would write or speak about it, and then the topic would fly back there. Well, it's kind of a quaint idea, but there's actually a lot of truth to it. And I'm repeating something I said more or less in an earlier video. The word topic, Dave Severson trained me over by the river there, the word topic comes from a Greek word that was topoi. And topoi meant place or location. That's the business of your soul flying off to get that topic.